Leamington and Kingsville join the rest of the province today. The municipalities are now in stage 2. People can enjoy some time on the patio or at a salon. The massive food drive, which swept across Windsor, Essex, was a success. Organizers say thousands of families will be fed because of Miracle Day. A heat warning remains in effect. This week is going to be hot. 31 outside right now. A low risk of thunderstorms in the area could break that humidity. It feels like 39 outside right now. Colette Kennedy has all the details tonight. I'm Chris Hensing. Thanks for joining us. Police services everywhere are facing the ripple effects of George Floyd's death in late May. Killed by a police officer, his death has sparked conversations about anti-Black racism and renewed the Black Lives Matter movement. We've seen the marches here in Windsor. We've heard calls to defund police services and reprioritize budgets. Windsor Police Chief Pam Mizuno spoke with Tony Doucette on Windsor Morning about how they're always evaluating the amount of officers that they have.
Officers are needed to investigate calls and do the follow-up to calls. There's a lot of work that's done besides the officers on the front line. And over the years, the complexity of investigations and the new types of calls that are emerging require a lot of hours to investigate, and they're a lot more complex, therefore requiring more police officers to do these investigations.
Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkens is standing by his position that defunding the police is nonsense. The mayor can't see a connection between the death of George Floyd and defunding the police, which many people are calling for in cities across North America. Dale Molnar joins us now live. Why is the mayor taking the stance that he is?
Well, Chris, the mayor says, if you take away money from the police service, you could be taking away money from investigations into domestic violence or sexual assaults or things like that. Now, according to numbers released by Statistics Canada, Windsor has the 6th largest police service per capita amongst 50 municipalities across the country. There are 426 members on the service, or 185 per 100,000. He doesn't feel that's too much. Now, usually when we talk about defunding the police, we talk about adding funding to other community initiatives, such as mental health treatment. The city does have an initiative called COAST, which brings police and social workers and other professionals together to work with people with mental health issues, but it's not an emergency response team. The mayor says police are still needed for that.
How would you handle calls and understand what the natures are to make sure that you're not sending a social worker to a call where a police officer is actually required, or vice versa? And because we don't want to put those who would be unarmed and untrained in how to deal with situations that could turn violent very quickly, we don't want to put them in harm's way. So I think it's fair to say, if you look at the trajectory of calls related to mental health over the last couple decades, certainly over the last decade that police have had to respond to, the number of calls related to mental health that police respond to has increased dramatically.
Now, when it comes to funding the Windsor Police, City Council makes the decision at budget time, but the police chief can still appeal that decision to a provincial body, which makes the ultimate decision on funding. So now when it comes to the numbers of police per capita, both the chief and the mayor say if we had a regional police service, it would save money and bring those per capita numbers down. Also, the mayor says being a border city adds extra cost to policing as well. Chris?
Now, in that conversation this morning on Windsor Morning, the police chief raised, when talking about defunding police, the lack of diverse representation on the service. We know that they've had diversity officers for some time. How successful has that been?
Well, Pam Mizuno told Tony Doucette that things have been improving. In 2012, only 2.7% of the police service was considered diverse, and as of 2018, the numbers increased to 4.4%. Now, I talked with the diversity officers today, and they say the more officers of color they have, the easier it is to recruit more people of color.
But I think a lot of times people just have no interest, and sometimes it could just be as simple as not knowing someone who's a police officer that looks like them. And so we found that as we go out to the community and do more outreach and talk to the community and let them know more about what policing is all about, I think there's a bit more buy-in. And I think now we seem to be getting more interest from diverse groups throughout our community because of the outreach we've been doing over the past several years now.
So we did participate in those protests that we had for several weekends. And I came out of that with having a lot of conversations with the Black community and trying to find out ways and how we become more attractive to them as an employer. So we're battling of years of not having that. So to be an attractive employer, you got to look like the people who want to join. So we didn't have that for the longest time. So now we're building these bridges, we're having these conversation and dialogue with members of these communities and saying, we want you, so what do we have to do in order to convince you or help you join our service?
Now, Constable McEachran says when they asked new black recruits what attracted them to the service, they say that they saw someone who looks like them doing the job. And he says there are a number of other reasons, including their own experiences with officers coming to their house when they're younger. He says making sure the officers in the Windsor Police Service do the job correctly goes a long way to attracting a diverse crowd to the service. Chris?
Thanks, Dale. CBC's Dale Molnar live tonight. People in Leamington and Kingsville are enjoying a taste of post-lockdown freedom today. They're the last two communities to leave stage 1 of Ontario's reopening plan. The CBC's Sanjay Maru with a look now at day 1 of stage 2 in Leamington.
Sitting on a patio, enjoying some lunch, or just having a drink. The only two regions in Ontario, Leamington and Kingsville, where that was not allowed. But at 12:01 this morning, that all changed. Those regions now permitted to enter into stage 2. That means bars can serve drinks to people outside. You can get your nails done, get a haircut. In fact, that's something Ontario Premier Doug Ford says he'll be coming to either Leamington or Kingsville for, to do just that, to get a haircut. Now, 6 hours before that 12:01 mark, we heard from a business owner in Kingsville who said this pandemic, being stuck in stage 1, was, quote, a burden, the worst thing to happen to his business. But today, here in Leamington, people are breathing a sigh of relief.
It's very exciting. I'm happy. I'm happy that everyone's finally cooperating so we could get to this point.
It's nice to get out in the summer and enjoy patio. But, we've been making do. We've had barbecues in the backyard pretty much every day.
Officials say outbreaks have been contained, community transmission low, even as the number of COVID-19 cases continues to rise in the agri-farm sector. More than 700 confirmed cases in Windsor, Essex, most of them migrant workers. But Leamington's mayor says that should not create a stigma. People should still feel safe about coming here as it enters stage 2. A similar pitch from the mayor over in Kingsville.
The supports have come forward, the resources to help our local level be able to be prepared and, again, create the condition that we have in place now that helped us move to stage 2.
We also know that an isolation housing complex is being built here in Leamington for about 250 to 300 migrant workers, expected to open sometime in September. Kingsville's mayor says he's considering a similar development as well, but he adds today is simply about celebrating the business owners who can unlock their doors and welcome their customers back. Sanjay Maru, CBC News, Leamington.
The Canadian Life Saving Society wants more swimming pools to open up. It says that 400 people drown in the country every year, and it's critical that kids in particular not miss out on a chance to learn to swim.
Perhaps it's the parent who actually hops in the pool and under the instruction of a qualified instructor helps with those instances where you do need personal contact being maintained. At the higher levels, mannequins can be used in place of a victim so that the rescuer can practice certain skills.
Now, the City of Windsor is choosing not to open outdoor pools, even though it could during stage 2 of Ontario's pandemic strategy. Premier Doug Ford got heated today, addressing concerns around long-term care homes and the use of air conditioning during this stretch of hot weather.
I'd like to get these owners that don't put air conditioning, I'd like to stick them in the room for 24 hours of 30-degree heat, see how they like it, or put their parents in there. You know, this is all about the dollars. Well, if we're going to change it, we'll change it. That's frustrating, and I apologize. I didn't realize there's a number of homes, but now since you mentioned that, I'll find out how many homes don't have AC in this weather. It's unacceptable.
Ford says he's open to changing the province's Long-Term Care Act to ensure residents in those homes have air conditioning. His comments came after CBC's Lisa Shing questioned the government after hearing from families whose loved ones are living in sweltering conditions.
For the last 4 years, Nick Popolo says his mother, Savera, has lived in sweltering heat in the summer at Woodbridge Vista Long-Term Care Home, where the rooms and hallways aren't air-conditioned.
It's frustrating. We've been through a lot, as you know, these last months.
Popolo took these photos on a visit last weekend. His mom's room was 27 degrees with 40% humidity. The temperature in the hallway by the nurses' station, not much cooler.
They helped build Ontario, build Toronto. Now they're being told to live in these facilities with no air conditioning. And according to them, it meets their standards, which is ridiculous.
Woodbridge Vista says it's in the process of installing 18 separate air conditioning units, and that COVID-19 protocols make it harder to cool the building with a system that circulates cooled air. Fans are required to be turned off to prevent the spread of the virus. The problem is Ontario's Long-Term Care Act does not require homes to be air conditioned, a fact that surprised Premier Doug Ford today, who vowed to call the homes himself.
I can't even imagine the amount of heat that's going into these rooms. It's terrible. And these poor elderly people, they can't defend themselves. That's our job.
So I asked Ford what he would do.
So does that mean you would consider amending the act to include something that would make air conditioning mandatory?
I'd consider it. I'd like to get these owners that don't put air conditioning, I'd like to stick them in the room for 24 hours of 30 degree heat, see how they like it, or put their parents in there.
If he's a man of his word and he really thinks it's awful and he wants everybody to make sure there's air conditioning in long-term care, then I'm welcoming him. I'm inviting him to bring that legislation forward, and we'll pass it tomorrow.
One of the problems in
the lack of regulations has been an issue for years, according to advocates.
Well, I think it's really serious. We get complaints every summer, and it's really difficult to know. We know that right now it's even worse.
That's because the rules state homes without air conditioning must have a designated cooling area for every 40 residents. But that isn't happening because of COVID-19 and physical distancing regulations. Lisa Shang, CBC News, Toronto.
Public health officials are putting contact tracing at the center of their response to new outbreaks across the country, including one at a mushroom farm just north of Toronto. Officials say that 30 workers at the farm in Vaughan have tested positive for COVID-19. They say it's the largest of several outbreaks at farms in the region. Officials are now tracking people who have come in contact with the infected workers. They add the risk to the general public is low. Leamington and Kingsville just entered stage 2, but there's other areas of the province that want to move into stage 3. Gyms and fitness centers are among the businesses still hoping to reopen this summer, but getting there means grappling with how to implement some new safety protocols. As Lauren Pelly reports, staying fit may be healthy, but gym owners know amid COVID-19, their services come with risks.
See, when I jab, my body twists.
Mixed martial arts instructor Danny Bouclair is giving me a one-on-one lesson while staying a couple meters away. It's not ideal, but it could be the new norm.
It's a bit painful because, about 90% of what I would want to do any day in a given class is now kiboshed.
Bouclair is among the many Ontario gym owners trying to figure out how to eventually reopen safely.
Each student will have to sign a waiver coming in, so we need to check off that they haven't left the province in the last 14 days. Hands have to be sanitized. Obviously, there's no social interaction whatsoever.
Larger fitness centers like the YMCA are prepping to reopen as well. A spokesperson says those facilities will have new protocols and changes to screening and cleaning. For Good Life clubs, a similar approach. Those gyms are planning to reduce capacity and enhance cleaning as well. So when can gyms reopen? Possibly in stage 3, but the province hasn't confirmed the timeline.
The team is actively looking at the data and looking to move into stage 3 as soon as we possibly can.
Regardless of what stage of reopening we're in, we are always at risk of having this infection. We still have to adhere to public health measures like physical distancing, hand hygiene, and putting on a mask when you're going into an indoor setting.
Bouclair knows there are risks, but he says most people want to get back on the mat.
For a lot of my students, I know that it's good just to get in and be part of the gym again. Yep, jab, and then cross. Perfect.
Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
The big final tally on the Windsor Essex Miracle Food Drive is in, and that number is just huge. 907,185 kilograms of food, just over 2 million pounds. That's the weight of 80 school buses collected in one day. Now, they raised enough to feed more than 28,000 households, which would be enough to feed everyone in Leamington for 2 years with the way they hand out food. And the demand, it's definitely there. 12% increase since the pandemic started, according to the Windsor Essex Food Bank Association. I called up one of the organizers of the Miracle Drive to hear why they started this, and he told me that they still need some help.
You know what, Chris, there was no specific tangible goal. We just knew that with everything going on with COVID and everyone being, some people off work, some people at home, we really wanted to give Windsor Essex residents something positive to get behind and focus their attention to. But obviously we knew there was a need, and a hidden need in some cases in our community, for people that were in need. And this was a great way to do that and help those people out.
You talked about getting behind people. Behind you right now, you can see some of the food here. Can you give us a look at what this is, what we've been able to pull off?
Yeah, this is the current scene at the WFCU Center in one of the arena pads that we have food in. And this is just from Windsor. We had community arenas all across the county as well, too, filled with food with similar scenes like this.
Is there any help that you still need?
Well, yes. So we absolutely need some volunteers here to help us sort through these goods. And you can see there's bins and pallets of food across this whole arena that are unsorted. And we will need another army of volunteers, or another miracle, if you want to call it, to help get this sorted. And we do have a sign-up link online and on our website and social platforms, promoting volunteers to go there. If they would like to sign up, they can sign up for a 3-hour shift, and they can come out and help be a part of the miracle that is continuing on here.
Pretty amazing what's happened in Windsor Essex and Chatham-Kent with those miracle food drives. It is still hot outside, and I can imagine everybody's trying to find an ice cream, a freezy, something to keep cool. For me, it's the calm of Colette Kennedy. She's got the full forecast coming up next. The federal government and the Assembly of First Nations have signed an agreement aimed at helping tens of thousands of Indigenous children. It deals in part with how to fund Bill C-92, legislation that allows First Nation communities to create their own child welfare systems and to keep their youth home.
We know there's 40,000 children in foster care right across Canada. And when Bill C-92 was passed, it was about making a difference and making sure that those children were looked after, that they were able to be kept home in their families and communities surrounded by their relatives. And that's really what this is about, making a difference for the children that are in care.
Today's agreement sets up a forum where Ottawa and First Nations can hammer out details about implementing Bill C-92. Quebec has launched a constitutional challenge to the bill, saying that these social services are the exclusive responsibility of the provinces. And joining us now for a live look at the weather is Colette Kennedy. That's that colorful map. Back at it again, eh?
Woohoo! Yep, our heirloom tomatoes, all the colors.
It's tough out there. I gotta say, it is hot. Like, you just go out and you can feel the waves. Even standing by a window, if the blinds are open, you can just feel the sun.
Yeah, it is very hot. And you know, I always, I am very grateful for air conditioning. Like, I have a pet peeve of when people jack the air conditioning up in the summertime, because I don't like that, because I want to know it's summertime. But I mean, at times like this, you do have to be grateful for it, and it is a blessing to be able to have it, to be able to sleep at night. And I do feel for those who don't have that blessing, because you need it. Today, now we're rounding this up a little bit, but our daytime high is 35 degrees, and our temperature isn't that far off that. And I'll show you that in just a moment here. Heat warnings prevail. We're going to keep this graphic going for a few more days yet, because we're going to keep this heat in place and this pattern. So this is what I mean. We're still holding on at 34. We've only dropped here a degree, 31 Chatham-Kent, and look at these humidex values. So we're holding on in the low 40s with that value. Now, not only that, we've had some of these cells that have been pushing across from Michigan, making their way, still holding together, although they're not packing as much of a punch, but still a few cells just kind of to the north of us. And a few of these here you see just to the south of Goderich. In fact, special weather statement, just because even though they're falling apart a little bit, still some wind gusts here could exceed about 70 kilometers an hour. So that's why there's that statement there for those. And we really do need some of the rain. We know that, how dry these conditions are, but it's the same kind of thing we get into. So tomorrow afternoon, maybe some showers popping up. It's just very hard to pinpoint where they will be. I do expect to see some of those coming back through southwestern Ontario. Same thing into Thursday afternoon, same thing into Friday afternoon. It's just that they get more significant as we get later in this week. So we'll see more widespread showers as we get towards the end of the week into the weekend. Not only that, as we get towards the weekend, we'll see those temperatures coming down a little bit, and we may get this heat warning lifted. But tonight, still low 20s. Tomorrow, still mid 30s, feeling like about 40. And this is what it looks like with those readings. So still in the 30s for Friday, but you see what I mean with those temps damping down just a little bit, Chris, as we can get towards Saturday, Sunday. I know you may want the heat for the weekend, but it'll be nice to get a little bit of relief in here.
No, absolutely. Just a little would be enough just to get us on to the next week, and we'll break more records again, I'm sure.
Yeah, actually, that is the trend, that we're going to come back up again with the heat.
I tell you. Thanks for this, Colette.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Now, coming up next, we're going to tell you the story of a president that was skeptical of COVID-19 and now has tested positive. That's after the break. Being a skeptic and a president does not make you immune to COVID-19. Now, that lesson hit home today for Brazil's president, who's tested positive for the coronavirus. Jair Bolsonaro began feeling unwell on Sunday with a cough and high temperature. For months, he's had downplaying these risks, dismissing that it was a little flu that would not seriously affect him. Days ago, he watered down regulations mandating face masks in Brazil. And last month, he railed against distancing rules supported by the World Health Organization. The 65-year-old said that he'd been taking hydroxychloroquine, an anti-malarial drug championed by Donald Trump to treat the illness, and that he feels fine. Brazil's infection rate remains high, with more than 1.6 million confirmed cases and over 66,000 deaths. Now, as of midnight last night, the border between the two most populated states in Australia was shut down for the first time in a century.
We have to do what we need to do to make sure everybody's safe in Australia, and in particular our local community.
This man's workplace, a boating business, lies in the state of Victoria, across the river, New South Wales. Travel between the two has been suspended, with Victoria reporting 191 of 199 new COVID-19 cases across the country. In the state capital, Melbourne, a high-rise housing complex, is its fourth full day of lockdown because of a surge in cases. Police and army personnel were sent to enforce the closure of the border, which in some cases runs right through twin cities. Crossing by boat, on foot, by road, train without permission can land offenders a 6-month jail sentence and a $7,700 fine. It's a sight for weary eyes, especially for anyone stuck indoors during this global pandemic. Just a burst of colors blanketing the plains in central Italy, certainly beating staring at the walls all day. This natural and wild flower show is an annual bloom of poppies, daisies, and cornflowers. Now, surprisingly, the local farmers, they see the flowers sprouting between the lentil crop as weeds, but they still keep them around. Not just for the beauty. The stems of these wildflowers, they actually help prop up the fragile lentil plants. One visitor who traveled all the way from northern Italy says it's like looking at a painting by Monet. It's 6:29 p.m. and that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, you can go to our website anytime, cbc.ca/Windsor, for more on these stories. We're also on social media. If you go on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, just search CBC Windsor. You'll find us there. Power and Politics is up next, already in progress. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.